Hey, welcome back once again. I hope you are having an amazing day. Speaking of which, please swipe below or download our episodes below, click up top. There we go. I still haven't figured that out, but maybe it'll work in this episode. I don't know exactly how it's going to work to get to our podcast. On Sunday, we are going to Pistons and Kings from Golden One Center. We're going to have a live podcast, some YouTube recordings. Look for those sometime next week. Should be very fascinating. I'm excited for all that to happen. Let's talk about the Chargers. Let's talk about the Chargers, the Colts, and Phillip Rivers, this dynamic that is existing right now. The Chargers quarterback situation is very much in the air at this point, and it seems further and further that the first domino is starting to connect in the quarterback market. The Indianapolis Colts are moving closer and closer towards a deal with Phillip Rivers. It's going to be a cheaper deal. Obviously, they didn't want to pick up the big dollar tab for Teddy Bridgewater or sign up for a 4-year deal. Smart organizations making smart moves. They've refused to pay out top dollar at any time throughout this trend, or throughout the past really 3 years, ever since Andrew Luck was their quarterback and they had drafted Quentin Nelson and Darius Leonard and picked up a lot of players and talented players without having a ton of money wasted. They still have a lot of money and they don't want to pay long-term deals because they recognize that is not the key to success. It's plugging in pieces. Now, Andrew Luck may have aborted last season and injuries stacked up. Last year for the Colts, they had Brissett was hurt. Andrew Luck retired, Brissett was hurt, Marlon Mack was hurt, T.Y. Hilton was hurt, Devin Funchess was out for the entire season, Eric Ebron was out for the entire season, Paris Campbell was in and out of the lineup. You're literally talking about a third-string quarterback, a third-string running back, a fourth-string wide receiver, and a second-string tight end. At one point in the season, they still went 8-8. Just because that defense is young and talented, that offensive line is strong, they still went 8-8 despite all that. So they plug in Phillip Rivers on a shorter-term deal. Obviously, they were smart about Tom Brady because they knew that was well out of their price range. They never even checked in on Tom Brady. They're going to prove my point, and I think it's why I like the Colts so much and why I'm rooting hard for the Colts to win and to compete with the Chiefs. It's like they have the talent. They have a smart GM. They have a really smart GM, and they have a plan that they are sticking to, the kind of the strength that exists only with the Patriots. Like, the Patriots do stuff like this all the time. Discipline to the goals. Know that you're right and be confident in executing. Don't make the same mistakes that other teams do. I thought they would just go ahead and do it with Teddy Bridgewater. I was wrong. They want the short-term deal on Phillip Rivers more than they want anything else. And they think Phillip Rivers, the future Hall of Famer, still has something left in the tank that can provide them the real opportunity to compete in the AFC. Why is that possible? Because value. Phillip Rivers possesses value to the Colts more than Tom Brady does at the dollar amount that he is being paid. Phillip Rivers has problems? Yes. Phillip Rivers is getting older? Yes. But less than 1 year ago, we're talking like just over a year ago, about 14 months ago, Phillip Rivers was playing in the divisional round of the AFC playoffs. And was he the sole reason why something like this happened? Not exactly. Obviously, strong defense, strong running game, incredible strategy to stop Lamar Jackson, great coaching on the defensive side of the ball. Poor coaching on the offensive side of the ball was the Chargers' failure this year, but also Phillip Rivers' inability to complete certain passes. He has a similar skill set to what he has in Indy. I actually love what's going to happen to the Colts next year with Phillip Rivers coming in. Now, the next question becomes, do they hold on to Jacoby Brissett? I think the answer has to be no, given that his $15 million is certainly not a good deal at this point. Can they move him is the other question. If they trade him, it would be like they would have to eat a dead cap hit of something like $6 or $7 million. But would the Colts be willing to do that for the 1 year with Jacoby Brissett left under contract? Or do they want to just ride it out with him as the backup and see what happens if they stay fully healthy? Because the Colts were in a real position last year to win the AFC South. There was that Thursday night game against the Texans that they were in a real position to claim a stranglehold of the AFC South. This takes into account all of their injuries and Brian Hoyer starting at quarterback at one point. This takes all of that into account. And yet we found ourselves in a position where, because Jacoby Brissett played so poorly, it was bad. Jacoby Brissett played one of his worst games in one of the biggest situations. The Colts were not going to make the playoffs. The situation I see is that they may draft a quarterback this year. Is that Jordan Love? Is that Jacob Eason? Who knows what the Colts want to do at that point? But Jordan Love is shooting up draft boards faster than we think, or faster than we realize, and it's because of this. He gets Patrick Mahomes types comparisons, and everyone wants to get the new Patrick Mahomes, but you're going to have to pair the right system with the right guy, and I don't know whether that is going to come through the Indianapolis Colts system at this point. Now, what does that mean for a guy like Phillip Rivers as he enters the system? Well, it means that he is obviously 38 years old. That's the first thing that's important. And it means that they understand he's not the long-term answer. He is a plug-and-play because they had to scramble after Andrew Luck's retirement. And they couldn't do it in the first season. There was only 3 weeks left in the season. They couldn't bring someone in, teach them the playbook, and just weren't available, and those quarterbacks just weren't at a reasonable price. In terms of the trade market, if they were available, especially because it was like 3 weeks left in the season. That's why people were like freaking out when Andrew Luck retired, and like the Colts were going to fall apart because they didn't have a quarterback. They had a better than average backup in Jacoby Brissett. Now, does that mean that they're in a position where going forward, Phillip Rivers can't win for them? No, he absolutely can. But we find ourselves at a time where he's trying to win one championship for the Colts, obviously coming from the offensive coordinator he had back in 2012, 2013. Less talented roster, still made the playoffs, Frank Reich. Actually quarterback coach, not offensive coordinator. And he sees that, like, he knows the offense. He has an offseason to get accumulated to that system. It's a perfect match, and the Colts realize it. I just didn't think about at first just how perfect that match was going to be, or if the Colts were interested in bringing in Phillip Rivers as like the savior of the organization. I think it's a great hire, and they recognize that Phillip Rivers is not the long-term answer, and that's the most important thing. The team is not signing up for Phillip Rivers as the long-term. They think he can be a stopgap the way Alex Smith was at the end in Kansas City in order to breed the future quarterback, or the way Brett Favre was for Aaron Rodgers. It's better than Jacoby Brissett, and that's the important thing, because they went 8-8 with all those injuries last year, and they still almost made it to the playoffs. Phillip Rivers to the Colts makes a ton of sense, and the Colts are proving that the theory about the Tom Brady situation is coming to reality, because the Colts are an extremely smart organization. They have made extremely smart decisions in terms of their drafting, in terms of their spending, and in terms of how they've built out a complete roster. They are extremely smart. They literally, this take is a little taken from Colin Cowherd, but the essence is true. I've manipulated it a little bit, that they were set to be the next 10 years of greatness, and Josh McDaniels recognized that. For some reason backed out, I'm not sure why. But Andrew Luck basically aborted that dynasty. Like 10 years of success with an all-time great talent in Andrew Luck. He's one of those quarterbacks you saw going in like, this is that guy. He's that talented. And now we find ourselves in a position where he's gone. He basically aborted that dynasty for the next 10 years. They're trying to find the semblance of Andrew Luck just so they can try and get closer to the Super Bowl at least once. Because Andrew Luck may have just killed like 3 years worth of Super Bowls in Indianapolis. This could be an entire podcast episode. I think it might be next week. Just have to say it. That this is the Colts' effort to try and rebound from the Andrew Luck situation. And this is also a counteract for Phillip Rivers in order to be that guy for the short term, but it's not a long-term answer. The Colts are still searching for a quarterback, but Phillip Rivers gives them 1 to 2 years of genuine stability to try and win with an extremely young, extremely talented roster that is built out so beautifully by Chris Ballard. It is a smart organization doing smart things in Indianapolis.